السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وهو يتولى الصالحين، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم، صلاة وسلاما دائمين متلازمين ليوم الدين. أما بعد، حياكم الله ومرحبا بالجميع. This is a new class where we're going to study a new book, Al-Arba'een An-Nawawiyyah, the Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, that which will aid us to understand the Sunnah better, inshaAllah ta'ala. And when we say the Sunnah here, this refers to everything attributed to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam in terms of his sayings, his actions, his approvals, and his characteristics. So this is the synonym of the word al-hadith riwayatan, because the field, ya ikhwata, the field in the science of hadith, studying ilm al-hadith, in general, it consists of two branches. The first is ilm al-hadith riwayatan, that which is connected to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, concerning his actions, his sayings, his approvals, and his descriptions. So it looks at studying the wording of the hadith. And that is what we're going to study through this book. And the second type of branch, which is studied under the science of hadith, is ilm al-hadith dirayatan. And this is what is related to the authenticity of the chain of the hadith. So here you study, for example, mustalah hadith, which refers to the principles which leads to knowing the situation of the chain of narration in terms of it being accepted or rejected. Likewise, ilm rijal, which refers to analyzing the narrators of the hadith and examining those in the chain of the sanad, yani the narration. Likewise, ilm jarh wa ta'deel, the knowledge of criticizing and praising the narrators. Wa tarikh ruwat, the science of the history of the narrators. For today's class, or tonight's class, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, what we're going to do is give an introduction, which is extremely important, ikhwata, because we're going to speak about 5 points. Okay? Tonight, this class, we're going to speak about 5 points, inshallah ta'ala. The first is حقوق السنة للأمة, the rights of the sunnah upon the ummah. The second is the importance of the sunnah and the fruits of holding on to it. The third is answering the common doubts that the rejectors of the sunnah that they bring. The fourth is proofs of the evidence of the sunnah from the Quran. And the fifth is principles of Aqidat Ahl Sunnah in regards to the legislation of the Sunnah. These are the 5 things that we're going to speak about tonight, inshaAllah ta'ala. And understanding these 5 points, ikhwata, will make us have more of a connection to the hadith that we will study, the hadith that we will study in this book, and the Sunnah in general, which is why I felt that it is appropriate and extremely important to speak about these points before starting the book. فالمبحث الأول, the first point, حق السنة أو حقوق السنة على الأمة, the rights of the Sunnah upon the Ummah. The Sunnah, ya ikhwata, has rights upon the Ummah. And from the most important of these rights are 10. To write these 10 down and be conscious of it. Number 1, al-mahabba, having love for the Sunnah. Among the greatest rights of the Sunnah upon us, the Ummah Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, is the love for everything attributed to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. So it is obligatory to love every Sunnah he established, because this is a branch of your sincere love for him, صح? As the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى أكون أحب إليه من ولده ووالده والناس أجمعين. As in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. None of you truly believe until I am more beloved to him than his child, his father, and all of the people. For loving the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, loving his sunnah is a sign of loving him. Loving the sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam is a sign of loving him. To test your love for the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, to see if you love everything that's related to him. To test your love for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, see if you love everything related to him. The Sahaba, the companions, were the true lovers of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam and his sunnah, to the point they will even emulate the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam in matters that are not worship, yani customary actions. It's come in a hadith which is in Sahihain. Anas radiallahu anhu, he narrated that I went with the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam to eat food, and he served bread and a soup with pumpkin inside of it. And he said that I saw the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam يتتبع الدباء من حول القصعة أو بالحول القصعة فلم أزل أحب الدباء بعد ذلك اليوم. He said, I saw the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam going after the pumpkin around the dish. And he said, since that day, Anas radiallahu anhu, he said, since that day, I always liked pumpkin. Because I saw the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam enjoying that food, I started loving that food. So be aware, ya ikhwata, of detesting anything from the Sunnah. As some may do, due to conflicting with their desires, not realizing that they're falling into something extremely dangerous. The scholars, yani fi ijma', scholars have agreed that hating anything from the Sunnah, even if one acts upon it, is kufr, it's disbelief. كما قال تعالى ذلك بأنهم كرهوا ما أنزل الله فأحبط أعمالهم. In Surah Al-Muhammad, where Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala says, because they disliked what Allah has revealed, so He's made their action worthless. Their deeds are worthless. So condition yourself to love the Sunnah, even if you fall short in following it. Yani a Muslim must love and respect it. This is a matter of aqidah, this is a matter of creed. For example, the Sunnah instructs to grow the beard for men, For those who shave it, they're sinful, but they must love and appreciate the act of growing the beard. When they see others doing it, they should love it, because it's the Sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. When the problem arises, when someone becomes so used to being negligent in following the Sunnah, he starts hating it. He starts hating it. وهذا شيء خطير جدا. يعني this is a مصيبة, calamity, and this is extremely dangerous. Likewise, يعني the Sunnah mandates the hijab for the sisters. For a woman who displays her beauty in public is sinful. يعني the one that falls into tabarruj, she's sinful, but it is obligatory for her to love and honor the hijab, because it's part of the Sunnah. When a person continuously is negligent in following the Sunnah, this can lead to, ya billah, to dislike and feeling discomfort seeing the Sunnah apparent. And this is the matter, this is where it becomes extremely, extremely dangerous. So if you fall short in following the Sunnah, be aware of a sin that is even more greater, which is detesting it. But this is the first point. This is the first right of the Sunnah upon the Ummah, is to have love for it. The second right of the Sunnah upon the Ummah is honoring and venerating the Sunnah. Honoring and venerating the Sunnah. And viewing it with respect and esteem. So the Sunnah is dignified because it is a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is esteemed because it is the guidance of As-Siddiq, the Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. For honoring the Sunnah, it stems from honoring its bearer, yani the Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. For it is obligatory to revere and venerate the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and treating him with the honor and the respect that is befitting for him. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions Surah Al-Fath, لتؤمنوا بالله ورسوله وتعزروه وتوقروه وتسبحوه بكرة وأصيلا. The people may believe in Allah and His Messenger and honor Him and respect Him. He's talking about the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام. وتسبحوه بكرة وأصيلا, and to exalt Him, meaning Allah, in the morning and afternoon. But this part of the verse, وتعزروه وتوقروه, to honor Him and respect Him, is talking about the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام. This is a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. حتى يا إخوة, the animals, they respect and make dua for the ulama, صح? As in the hadith, وأنه لا يستغفر له دواب البحر حتى حيتان في جوف الماء في جوف الماء. Even the fishes in the depths of the sea, they seek forgiveness and they have respect for the ulama, who are the inheritors of the prophets. And the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام is the most knowledgeable of all creation. So the one who does not respect the Messenger is as if he is lower in his intellect than the animals. Because even the animals, they respect him. Even the animals, they're making dua for him. لذلك قال شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله: إذا كانت البهائم والجمادات تعظم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فنحن أحق بتعظيمه. He said, if animals and inanimate objects revere the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام, we are more deserving of doing so. So when a confirmed sunnah reaches you, ya ikhwata, honor it in yourself. When you hear his sayings, hold them high in regard. Hold them in high regard. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي. In Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, He says, oh, you have believed, do not raise your voices above the voice of the Messenger. Wa Imam Hamad ibn Zayd, rahimahullah, he mentioned a latifa, a benefit in regards to his verse. He said, rahimahullah, أرى رفع الصوت عليه بعد موته كرفع الصوت عليه في حياته. إذا قرئ حديثه وجب عليك أن تنصت له كما تنصت للقرآن. He says, I view raising one's voice over his after his death as equivalent to raising it during his life. Meaning, when a hadith is recited, you must listen to it as you listen to the Quran. And also this verse, some of the scholars, they say, it means that opinions and desires and corrupt analogies, yani qiyas, should not be elevated above the words of the Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. So this is a part of the etiquette with the Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam during his life and after his death. So this is the second right of the Sunnah upon the Ummah. The third right of the Sunnah upon the Ummah is to believe that the Sunnah represents complete guidance. Are you with me, ikhwata? To believe that the Sunnah represents complete guidance. As the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, Khayrul Hadi Hudda Muhammad. The best of guidance is the guidance of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. There is no guidance except by following the Quran and Sunnah. Seeking it elsewhere will lead a person astray. Will lead a person astray. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions Surah Al-Qasas, فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَجِبُوا لَكَ فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّمَا يَتَّبِعُونَ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ وَمَنْ أَضَلُّ مِمَّنْ تَبَعَ هَوَاهُ بِغَيْرِ هُدًى مِنَ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. If they do not respond to you, O Muhammad, know that they only follow their own desires. And who is more astray than the one who follows his desire without guidance from Allah? So in this verse, Allah mentions or shows that there are only two paths. Either you respond to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, or you're following your desires, or you're following whims. So this is the third right of the Sunnah upon the Ummah, to believe that the Sunnah represents complete guidance. The fourth out of the 10 that we're going to mention, inshallah, is complete submission to the Sunnah and prioritizing it above everything else. When a Sunnah reaches someone, ya ikhwata, when a hadith reaches you that is authentic, he should surrender, comply, and embrace it without hesitation, discarding all else in its favor. But this is an obligation, it's not a choice. فلا وربك لا يؤمنون حتى يحكموك فيما شجر بينهم ثم لا يجدوا في أنفسهم حرجا مما قضيت ويسلموا تسليما. As Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala mentioned in Surah An-Nisa, He said they will not truly believe until they make you, O Muhammad, judge concerning that which they dispute among themselves, and then find within themselves no discomfort from what you have judged, and submits, وَيُسَلِّمُ تَسْلِيمًا, and submit to it with complete submission. Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, he said the Muslims unanimously agree bil ijma' that whoever finds a sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam must not leave it for anyone's word. ولذلك if you look at the Sahaba, there's many examples. From them is the hadith of Ali radiallahu anhu and the chapter of Bab al-Masl al-Khuffayn, wiping over the socks. What's the hadith? This is the hadith of Sifat al-Masl al-Khuffayn, how to wipe over your socks. When a person does wudu and a person wearing socks, how to wipe over your socks. This is the hadith of Ali radiallahu anhu. He said, لو كان دين برأيي لكان أسفل الخف أولى بالمسح من أعلاه وقد رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يمسح على ظهر خفيه. He said that if the religion was based upon opinion, it would have been more important to wipe under the socks, under the leather socks, than wiping on top of it. Then what did he say? وقد رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يمسح على ظهر خفيه. But I saw the messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام wiping over the top of the socks. So he submitted رضي الله عنه. Because at first glance, one might say that the bottom of the sock is more deserving to be wiped. صح? Because the bottom of the sock, that is what touches the dirt and filth. Whereas the top, more likely the dirt doesn't touch the top of the socks. For why is it that the top of the socks have to be wiped? At first glance, someone may think that. Like in Ali radiallahu anhu, what did he say? I saw the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam wiping over the top of the socks, for I wiped over the top. No questions. And this is Islam, ya ikhwata. This is Islam. الاستسلام لله بتوحيد والانقياد له بطاعة وبراءة من الشرك وأهله. A foundation of Islam is submission to the text. If you know that the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam did something, khalas, that suffices. You have no option but to emulate his action. Opposing this right includes resisting the sunnah, being arrogant about it, objecting to it, or prioritizing something else over it. Which للأسف يعني is something common in the time we live in today. When a sunnah is presented to him, you say to him, Ya akhi, this is from the sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. How many people reject it and they use their own intellect, their own aql, or they say logic contradicts this, or this contradicts my madhab, or times have changed, as if they have a choice, yani as if you have a choice of rejecting the sunnah. It's not a matter of choice, ya ikhwata. This is something you are binded yani, by this religion and all its rulings. Everything you're being addressed. When you see a hadith of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, you are being addressed. Man, whoever testifies, man shahida la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, it's upon you to bind by the Sharia, to believe that you are being addressed, and it's obligated upon you to follow. Some ya ikhwata, they may hear a hadith, you tell them a hadith, but it's as if they have not heard anything. Yani, mentioning something with or without the hadith to him is as if you're saying the same thing to him. And this is a musibah, this is a calamity. Ya ikhwata, when he said to a Muslim, for example, the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam prohibited the cutting of the beard. And the brother, he listens to the hadith, but it's as if he hasn't heard anything. He smiles and carries on. Carries on, يحلق اللحية, as if it does not concern him, as if it's not addressing him but someone else. هذه مصيبة, this is a calamity يا إخوة. This is something linked to the foundation of your religion. الاستسلام. إنما كان قول المؤمنين إذا دعوا إلى الله ورسوله ليحكم بينهم أن يقولوا سمعنا وأطعنا وأولئك هم المفلحون. As Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions in Surah An-Nur, that the statement of the true believers when they are called to Allah and His Messenger to judge between them is that they say, سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. We hear and we obey. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. These are the ones that are successful. When a man came to Imam Shafi'i about a matter, when a man asked Imam Shafi'i about a matter and was informed that the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam had said something regarding it, he said to Imam Shafi'i, do you agree with this? Yani this man came to Imam Shafi'i and said to him, the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam said this. Do you agree with this, Imam Shafi'i? He said to Imam Shafi'i, do you agree with this? Do you advocate this? So Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah started shaking, became pale. And he said to him, Wayhak, and he woe to you. أي أرض تقلني وأي سماء تذلني إذا رويت إذا رأيت عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أو رويت عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ولم أقل به نام على رأسي والعين. He said, woe to you. How can the earth bear me? And how could the sky shade me if I narrate something from the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام, not act upon it? He said, على رأسي والعين. My head and my eyes. So among the gravest dangers to a person, to a person's religion, is to meet a verse or hadith with objection or rejection. This is a serious matter, yani, that is not to be taken lightly because it pertains to the foundation of religion, which is submission. The foundation of Islam, this deen al-Islam, is submission. And contemplate on the hadith of the man who was eating with his left hand, which is narrated Sahih Muslim. I'm sure you all heard of this hadith, sah? The man that was eating with his left hand, and the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, eat with your right hand. Qul biyaminik. He said, Qul biyaminik. What did the man say? He said out of arrogance. He said he cannot eat with his right hand. So the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, may you never be able to. For his hand became paralyzed. His hand then became paralyzed. But this is a warning, ya ikhwata. When a hadith comes to you, when we study a hadith An-Nawawiyyah, submit to it immediately. طيب, that's the 4th rights of the Sunnah upon the Ummah, out of the 10 that we're going to mention, inshallah. The 5th, ya ikhwata, is immediate response without hesitation and precise and acting upon it precisely. The 5th is immediate response without hesitation and acting upon it precisely. For the Muslims, they must promptly respond to the Sunnah, obeying its commands, abstaining from its prohibitions, and believing its reports or its narrations. This is the essence of faith in the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. And this is what Allah tabarak wa ta'ala commands. وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولُهُ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. The very first verse in Surah Al-Anfal. Obey Allah and His Messenger if you are believers. وقال تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله ولرسوله أو استجيبوا لله ولرسوله إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم واعلموا أن الله يحول بين المرء وقلبه وأنه إليه تحشرون. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, and ponder on this verse, يا أيها الذين آمنوا, O you who believe, استجيبوا لله ولرسوله, respond to Allah and to the Messenger إذا دعاكم, when He calls you. إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم, when He calls you that which gives you life. Notice this part. لما يحييكم, that which gives you life, indicating that the true life is under the shadow of the Sunnah. True life is the life of the heart, which only exists in obedience, to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. That's why you will see in the Quran, yani, the Messenger, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes when He says to follow the commands of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, He describes it as a covenant or a mercy and a healing and a light and guidance and life. Because the true life is the life of the heart. This only exists in obedience to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. The one who is negligent and the one who is lazy in obeying the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, they will live in darkness, ya ikhwata. Their life will be deficient. Some, they say, the commands of the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام, there's difficulty, there's burdensome, صح? والله يا إخوة هذا خطأ. قرة العين, the best of feelings and the delight of the eyes and the life of the hearts is following the Sunnah. The more you follow the Sunnah, the more you apply the Sunnah, the more you're eager to apply the Sunnah and have love for the Sunnah. Wallahi, you will have a feeling in your heart that nothing can replace. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَجْعَلِ اللَّهُ نُورًا فَمَا لَهُ مِنْ نُورٍ. In accordance to how much you hold on to the Sunnah is according to how much light you have in this life and the next. ولا شك لا ريب, as you all know, the commands of the Sharia is not for play. صح? This Sharia is a map Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala from His mercy has placed for the creation to know how to attain success, salvation, and happiness in this life and the next. For the one who applies the Sunnah and responds to the Sunnah immediately, he's not lazy in it, he will attain this success and salvation and happiness in this life and the next. Naam. The sixth point, ikhwata, the sixth right of the Sunnah upon the Ummah is sufficing with the Sunnah and not adding anything to it. This includes every innovation and invention in the deen. The innovator who says that the Sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam is insufficient, so he says, I will add to it. Little does this miskin, does he realize that he gains nothing. All he is doing is putting extra hardship on himself, and his action is rejected. He's not getting any reward for it. Rather, he's going to get the opposite. He's going to get punished for it. من أحدث في أمرنا هذا من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. In another narration, من عمل عملا ليس عليه أمرنا فهو رد. As the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, whoever does an action which is not in accordance with our matter, it will be rejected. And this hadith is in the book that we're going to study. It's the fifth hadith that we're going to study, inshallah. Even if the innovation, ya ikhwata, even if it appears attractive, it is considered the worst of matters. Even if you think this is a good thing or it seems attractive to you, it is considered the worst of matters. Khutbat al-Hajj that we hear every Friday. What did the Messenger alayhi salatu wasallam used to say? The worst of matters are those who are newly invented, and every innovation is misguidance. So innovation is misguidance, it's not guidance, even if it seems appealing. كما قال عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله عنه, ذكر ابن بطة في كتابه الإبانة هذا الأثر, كل بدعة ضلالة وإن رآها الناس حسنة. He said رضي الله عنه, every innovation is misguidance, even if the people see it as something good. There's an author that the Razaki mentioned is Musannaf, Sa'id ibn Musayyib, who is from the Kibar Tabi'in, the major Tabi'in. Okay? Rahimahullah. He saw a man praying repeatedly after Fajr. After the Adhan of Fajr, this man, he kept praying units. For Sa'id ibn Musayyib, he advised him against it. And the man said to him, will Allah punish me for praying? For Sa'id ibn Musayyib, he said, no, but he will punish you for going against the Sunnah. But the story here teaches us the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he only prayed 2 units after the dawn, after the Adhan of Fajr, he only prayed 2 units. So it's sufficient for a Muslim to follow him in that. Is it not sufficient for a Muslim to follow him in that? Or does he think that he's more knowledgeable than the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, or more pious than him, or more fearful of Allah than him? Wallahi, ikhwata, true adherence to the Sunnah requires stopping at its limit. Do not add anything to it. Those who add something to the Sunnah are either in reality saying they know better than the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, or they're accusing the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam of ignorance. And this is disbelief. This is kufr, ya billah. But that's the 6th point. The 7th right of the Sunnah upon the Ummah is striving to learn it. Striving to learn it. A Muslim's duty towards the Sunnah includes trying to learn it. If the Sunnah holds a high place in your heart, if you love, honor it, and you believe it's your path to Jannah, then why should you, lack in learning it and not delve deeply into its knowledge? Some people, they read everything except the Sunnah. They read more books regards to knowledge of the dunya than the Sunnah. A Muslim must strive, ya ikhwati, to learn and immerse himself in the teachings of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. Aim to learn a new hadith. When I say learn, striving to learn it, doesn't mean that you have to wait for a class, for example. La shakka, that's from the ways of learning, but it also means just read a hadith a day. مثلا, aim to learn a new hadith every day. Pick up a book from the authentic hadith, رياض الصالحين, or المختصر صحيح البخاري. Read a hadith a day. And most hadith are clear and understandable. If you find something confusing, then ask the people of knowledge about it. And if you find the teacher teaching a book of hadith, then be eager to join it and spread the khayr to others. Wallahi, when you study the Sunnah, ya ikhwata, you will find immense happiness and you will find the impact. You will see it will impact your life. It will impact your heart and it will impact your life when you study these ahadith of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. And how could that not be the case when he's the best of guidance? Huh? But that's the 7th point. The 8th right of the Sunnah upon the Ummah is to properly understand it without negligence or exaggeration. So a Muslim must understand the Sunnah correctly after verifying its authenticity from the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. And one must know this is authentic first and foremost. Don't just read any hadith and, you must know if it's authentic or not. Don't just read any book. Because many, they attribute a hadith to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and they practice it. The Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, Man kadhiba alayya muta'ammidan, whoever lies or speaks about me that which is false is one of the liars. Whoever speaks about me what is false is one of the liars. And another hadith, Man kadhiba alayya muta'ammidan, whoever lies on me purposely, let him take his seat in the hellfire. But the first thing is to ensure the accuracy of the attributing the hadith to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. Then understand this hadith as the Salaf have understood it. As the Salaf and those who follow their path have understood it. It's not personal interpretation, ya ikhwata, or twisting it to suit one's desires. And that is why it is extremely important to study the hadith under a teacher. The ninth right of the Sunnah upon the Ummah is to convey it to others, teaching it to those who are able and calling to it. If you hear an authentic hadith, make sure to spread it. So this knowledge is spreaded. And this day and age is something extremely easy to spread a hadith in channels or group chats, so that many people, they may not know a hadith. So when they find out a new hadith, they act upon it. And you will share the reward of those who act upon it. And the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, نظر الله امرأ سمع منا شيئا فبلغه كما سمعه فرب مبلغ وعم سامع. May Allah brighten a man who hears something from us and communicates it to others exactly as he has heard it. Then he said, it may be that the receiver of knowledge understands it better than the one who heard it. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he mentioned Kitab Jalal-al-Afham, that uh, conveying the sunnah of the sunnah to the ummah is more virtuous than putting arrows in the enemy's chest. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah said, conveying the sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam to the ummah is more virtuous than delivering or putting arrows in the enemy's chest. Now, the last right that I want to mention, inshallah, of the sunnah upon the ummah is to defend it and to feel anger for it and be zealous about it. So the 10th is to defend the sunnah and feeling anger for it. And this stems from a genuine respect and love for it. For a Muslim who truly honors and loves the sunnah, he cannot bear to see or hear anyone violating the sunnah or transgressing its limits or daring against it. So he must do what he can with hikmah, with wisdom, to refute the transgressors in their falsehood. And the greatest way of defending the sunnah, ikhwata, the greatest way of defending the sunnah and the greatest victory for the sunnah and the most effective and rebuttal to his enemies is to first support the sunnah within ourselves. Yani us, ourselves, correcting our relationship with the sunnah. By studying it ourselves, raising our children upon it, teaching it to those around us. If we claim to be from the people of the sunnah, we must embody it in our actions, not merely just words. Every aspect of our lives, every action, every moment is guided by the noble teachings of the Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam. So upon us to learn and apply it. So remember these 10 points, these 10 points that we mentioned are extremely important. When we study these ahadith in this book, Al-Arba'een An-Nawawiyyah, do not let it just be information that goes over your head. Be conscious of these 10 things, these 10 rights of the sunnah upon the ummah. Now, so that's the first mabhath that I wanted to speak about in this introduction. The second point that I wanted to mention is the importance of learning the sunnah and the fruits of studying it. The importance of learning the sunnah and the fruits of studying it. As you know, ya ikhwata, from the requisites of Iman is having faith in the Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam, to enter Islam. To even enter Islam, one has to bear witness that he is the Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam. This is the second part of the Shahada, sah? The first and second part of the Shahada necessitates each other. If one said the first half of the Shahada, it necessitates the second half. If I said Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, this necessitates Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. If I said Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, this necessitates Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Yani they come together. This is why it's considered one pillar. The first pillar is what? The Shahadatain, sah? That's why it's considered as one. One has to testify both to enter Islam. And this shows you the station of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, which is why some of the scholars of tafsir, they mention this is the meaning of the verse. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. And we raised high for you your mention, O Muhammad. Because a person cannot enter Islam except by saying the Shahada or testifying that he's a messenger of Allah. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala sent the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam to the people to make him a guide for the people. And he conveyed the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and clarified the meanings of his verses. And the fruits of adhering to the sunnah are tremendous. Whoever follows him, ya ikhwata, Allah will suffice and guide and assist and provide for him. If you wish to be from those who are successful, everyone wants to be successful, sah? Everyone's chasing after success. How many people actually understand what does success actually mean? Qaleel, ya ikhwata, qaleel. The people that are successful are those who adhere to the sunnah. وَمَا يُطِعِ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولَهُ وَيَخْشَى اللَّهُ يَتَّقِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَائِزُونَ. As Allah mentioned Surah An-Nur, verse number 52. Whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, fears Allah and is dutiful to Him, they are the ones that are successful. فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَائِزُونَ. And whoever wants the mercy of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, upon you is to follow the Sunnah. وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. As Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, He mentioned in Surah Al-Imran, and obey Allah and the Messenger that you may obtain mercy. And whoever seeks guidance, upon you is the Sunnah. وَاتَّبِعُوهُ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ. As Allah mentions Surah Al-A'raf, and follow Him that you may be guided. And whoever wants to be on the straight path, upon you is the Sunnah. وَإِنَّكَ لَتَدْعُوهُمْ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. And indeed you, O Muhammad, guide to the straight path. As Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala mentioned in Surah Al-Mu'minun. So whoever wants salvation, whoever wants Jannah, every single one of us wants Jannah, صح? Whoever wants Jannah, upon you is to adhere to the Sunnah. ولذلك جاء في الحديث في البخاري, the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, all of my ummah will enter paradise except those who refuse. So the Sahaba, they said, Ya Rasulullah, man ya'ba? Who are those that refuse? The Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, من أطاني دخل الجنة ومن أصاني دخل النار. Whoever obeys me, he will enter paradise. And the one who disobeys me, he is the one that has refused. That's why from the most beautiful statements is the statement of Imam Malik, rahimahullah. The statement of Imam Malik, rahimahullah, where he said, As-sunnatu safinatu Nuh. Man raqibaha naja, wa man takhallafa anha ghariq. He said the sunnah is like Noah's Ark, the Ark of Nuh, alayhi salam. Whoever embarks on it is saved, and whoever stays behind is drowned. Shaykh al-Islam bin Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he said, وَهَذَا حَقٌّ. And his statement of Imam Malik, he said, this is the truth. فَإِنَّ السَّفِينَةَ النُّوحِ إِنَّمَا رَكِبَهَا مَنْ صَدَقَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ وَاتَّبَعَهُمْ. He said, the Ark of Nuh alayhi salam was only boarded by those who believed in the messengers and followed them. And he said, whoever did not board it has disbelieved the messengers, has disbelieved in the messengers. So then he said, adhering to the Sunnah is following the message that came from Allah. So following it is like boarding the ship of Nuh, both inwardly, batinan wa zahiran, both inwardly and outwardly. And whoever desires Allah's love, if you want Allah to love you, upon you is to hasten to obey His Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam. قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ. Surah Al-Imran. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala says, if you love Allah, then follow me. Follow me. And Allah will love you, and He will forgive you for your sins. So these are some of the fruits of following the Sunnah and adhering to it. So learning about the Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam, ya ikhwata, has the greatest of importance. The more one learns about his statements, his actions, his approvals, his characteristics, the more one iman increases in him and his guidance, which is the path to success. As the poet, he says, "An-mar'i la tas'al wa sal an qarinihi. فَكُلُّ قَرِينٍ بِالْمُقَارِنِ يَقْتَدِي." The poet, he says, do not ask about the person, but ask about his role model. Because every person will emulate their role model. And this is the reality, sah. Why is it that some brothers or sisters, they dress the way they dress, or act the way they act, or speak the way they speak? They follow what they look up to, sah, or what they busy their heart and their mind from what they look at and what they listen to. And the one that is smart is the one who understands his goal is Jannah. So he busies himself looking up to the best of example. Yeah, the seerah of the Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam, when you study the statements and the actions and the approvals and the characteristics of the Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam, he gives you guidance from every angle of life, from the angle of worship, from the angle of mannerisms, how to be with your spouse, your family, your friends, from the angle of his dealings, like in business, in management of a state, and so forth. وَكَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. As Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, He said, you have the best examples in the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. And we need the Sunnah as much as we need the Quran. The Kitab and Sunnah are like the two wings of the bird. Are you with me, ikhwata? We need the Sunnah as much as we need the Quran. The Kitab and Sunnah are like the two wings of a bird. ولذلك أيوب السختياني رحمه الله, when he mentioned that a man came to Mutarrif ibn Abdullah and he said to him, do not speak to us about other than the Quran. And he replied, he said, Inna wallahi ma nuridu bil Quran badalan, walakinna nuridu man huwa a'lamu bil Qur'ani minna. He said, by Allah, we're not trying to replace the Quran. Like what we want is know about the one that is most knowledgeable of the Quran. Because the Sunnah is an explanation of the Quran, صح? And that leads to the third mabhath of this introduction out of the 5 points that we wanted to speak about in this introduction, inshallah. The third mabhath is answering doubts of those who reject the Sunnah. Answering the doubts of those who reject the Sunnah. Those who challenge the authority of the Sunnah, they call themselves Al-Quraniyun, صح? In reality, they are Al-Kadhabun. They're not from the people of the Quran. And this is a misguided group uh, which continued among other misguided groups until the early 20th century, when a group emerged in the Indian subcontinent supported by the British occupation. But they claim to discard all ahadith, relying solely on the Quran. They even say whoever follows the Sunnah is fell into shirk. And they say if you take from the Sunnah, it slows down the Ummah, the progress of the Ummah. And this is something now has been widespread because of the social media channels and magazines and so forth, something that has widely spreaded. Hatta even some of the awam, even some of the laymen have doubts of the Sunnah, للأسف. I remember around 7 years ago, تقريبا, I was on the plane and a brother that was sitting next to me, a brother is originally from Saudi Arabia, like he went to America to study. So he was doing something, he was sitting next to me, he was doing something that was impermissible. So I advised him gently and told him, my brother, Allah bless you, the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam said this, ila akhiri. And his reply to me was, he does not believe in the Sunnah. He does not believe in the Sunnah. And this is the first time I've actually, met someone who does not believe in the Sunnah, and I spoke to someone who does not believe in the Sunnah. It was a shock to me. So I asked him, what's the reason you don't follow this, believe in the Sunnah, akhi? What's the reason you don't follow the Sunnah, or you don't believe in the Sunnah? Shahid, we had like a 2-3 hour conversation until the plane landed. Alhamdulillah, by the end of when the plane landed, the brother, alhamdulillah, he accepted the Sunnah and his misunderstandings became clear to him. And him and the likes of the brothers who fall into these doubts, it goes back to ignorance, ikhwata. It goes back to the ignorance of the legislation of the Sunnah. And their doubts is generally built upon 5 things. And this was the doubts that this brother had, these 5 things that sat next to him on the plane. And generally, I've seen it with the brothers who reject the Sunnah, they have these 5 doubts. Generally, it's these 5 doubts that we're going to speak about. The first is those who deny the authority of the Sunnah of our Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam, they use the verse, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ, Surah Al-Hijr. وَاللَّهُ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى, Surah Al-Hijr, verse number 9. وَاللَّهُ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى, He says, indeed we have sent down the reminder, and indeed we will preserve it. So they say that this verse is an evidence that Allah Ta'ala is responsible for preserving the Quran but not the Sunnah. Because he said, if the Sunnah was a evidence and something authoritative as the Quran, Allah would have ensured its preservation. How do we answer these doubts? We say this is a baseless claim which has no evidence. Yani specifying the meaning of this verse, Inna nahnu nazalna dhikra, specifying the meaning of the reminder here is just the Quran, is baseless. There's no evidence that this is specifically for the Quran. Because the reminder refers to all that which Allah Azza wa Jalla has revealed to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, which includes the Quran and the Sunnah. The Sunnah explains the Quran. And Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala mentions Surah Al-Nahl, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ. And we have revealed to you, O Muhammad, the Quran, that you may make clear to the people. وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ. The word dhikra is mentioned here. Surah Al-Nahl, chapter 16, verse number 44. And we have revealed to you the Quran and the dhikr, that you may make it clear to the people. لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. To make it clear to the people what was sent down to them, so that they may give thought. And Allah Ta'ala says, وَمَا يَنْتُقَ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ لَوَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. The Messenger والسلام, does not speak from his desire, but what he speaks is revelation. For the meaning here, when the doubt they have of this verse, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَلْنَا ذِكْرًا, indeed we have sent down the reminder. The reminder is what? It includes the Sunnah. What's the evidence that this is just the Quran? Tamam, that's how we answer the first doubt. The second doubt that they bring is they say, the deniers of the Sunnah, they say, if the Sunnah was a proof, the Messenger والسلام, would not have prohibited its writing. And they use the evidence in Sahih Muslim, Hadith of Sa'id al-Khudri, that the Messenger والسلام, said, لا تكتب عني ومن كتب عني غير القرآن فليمحوه. Do not write anything from me, and whoever writes anything from me other than the Quran, let him erase it. Okay? How do we reply to this doubt? Firstly, we say, the Messenger والسلام, he encouraged the preservation and transmission of the Sunnah. We mentioned the hadith, صح? May Allah brighten, نَضَّرَ اللَّهُ إِمْرَأً. The Messenger والسلام, said, may Allah brighten the face of someone who hears a hadith from us, memorizes it, and conveys it to others. He also والسلام, informed that the transmission of hadith through chains is something that will remain in the ummah. He said, alayhi salatu wasalam, تَسْمَعُونَ وَيُسْمَعُ مِنْكُمْ وَيُسْمَعُ مِمَّنْ يَسْمَعُ مِنْكُمْ. As in the Musnad of Ahmad wa Abi Dawud. You will listen to my hadith, and it will be heard from you, and it will be heard from those who heard from you. He also, alayhi salatu wasalam, prayed for some of his companions for the memorization. You all know the qissa of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, right? How did he memorize so much? It was from the dua of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. The hadith is in Bukhari. When the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, or Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he came to the Messenger alayhi wasalam, and he said to him, إِنِّي أَسْمَعُ مِنْكَ حَدِيثًا كَثِيرًا أَنْسَاهُ. Indeed, O Messenger of Allah, I hear from you many narrations, many ahadith, but I forget them. For the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he told him to spread your garment. For Abu Hurairah, he did this. And then he moved his hands, and he filled them with something. And then he said he emptied my rida. And then he said, take and wrap this sheet over your body. And then Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he said, فَمَا نَسِيتُ شَيْئًا بَعْدَهُ. After that, I've never forgot anything. Secondly, the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, would repeat his words. As in Aisha radiallahu anha used to mention, the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam would repeat his words 3 times, so that they could be memorized and understood. He might even review the memorized parts with some of his companions. Thirdly, he alayhi salatu wasalam, he warned sternly, he warned the ummah against lying about him. As in the hadith in Sahihain, Man kadhiba alayhi muta'ammadan falyatabawwa maq'adahu min nar. Whoever lies about me intentionally, let him take his place in the fire. Fourthly, he allowed his companions to write his hadith. As in the statement of Abdullah bin Amr radiallahu anhu, he said, "Uktub فوالذي نفسي بيده ما يخرج منه إلا حق." The Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, write, well, by the one in whose hands my soul is in, nothing comes out from my mouth, yani his mouth, except the truth. As in Abu Dawud. And in Bukhari Muslim, that a man during the year of Al-Fath, the conquest, asked to write down what he heard from the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and he commanded the companions to write for him. Fifthly, the companions, radiallahu anhum, were extremely eager to hear the hadith of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam and to memorize it. Hearing one hadith is considered something extremely valuable to them, to the extent they will travel distances just to hear one hadith. Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhu traveled from Medina to Syria, Asham, which is a journey of a month. He didn't go there for trade, he didn't go for leisure. He went just to hear one hadith from Abdullah bin Unais. From Abdullah bin Unais radiallahu anhu. And when he reached and embraced him, he said, I heard a hadith was transmitted from you that you heard from the Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam, and I feared that one of us might die before I could hear it. But he traveled all the way from Medina to Syria just to hear this one hadith. Traveling back then, ya akhwata, is not like now. Traveling back then is not like now, where we have planes and cars and so forth. Al-Ayyub al-Ansari, rahimahullah, he traveled from Medina to Egypt to hear a single hadith from Uqbar ibn Amir radiallahu anhu. The sixth point is the companions radiallahu anhum were people of piety. They were extremely careful, ya ikhwata, in having precision in narrating from the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. They were keen, yani very keen to convey exactly how, as they heard. As Al-A'mash من التابعين, he said, كان هذا العلم من أقوام كان أحدهم لأن يخر من السماء أحب إليه من أن يزيد فيه واوا أو ألفا أو دالا. He said this knowledge used to be with the people who would have preferred to fall from the sky than to add a letter, to add a waw or an alif or a dal to the hadith of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. But they were extremely, extremely careful in the narration. I would sometimes hear a hadith being narrated by someone and would ask for a witness to testify with him that he heard it from the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. And the stories are many. So those who say that this doubt that they bring, okay, that the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam forbade the writing of his hadith, where he said, do not write from me. لا تكتب عني. Whoever has written anything from me other than the Quran, he should erase it. That's one of the evidences these people use. So they argue that these hadith are entirely unacceptable. These people we just mentioned, everything I just mentioned, why do they overlook the evidences that Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam permitted writing and encouraged? Everything we just mentioned now shows that the Messenger alayhi permitted writing his ahadith and encouraged it. Why did they overlook this? Huh? Because the hadith of permitting and writing are more numerous and authentic. So why do they not bring this? Why do they not rely upon that? This is a sign that they're following their desires. And even if you want to reconcile between these ahadith or that one hadith where the Messenger has prohibited from writing, the scholars they mentioned, this was abrogated by the permission to write. The initial prohibition was due to the fear of confusing the Quran with the Sunnah. When it was in the beginning stages, when the revelation of the Quran was being sent down, out of fear that the Quran and Sunnah will be mixed up, the Messenger alayhi salatu wasallam prohibited it. But it's not a prohibition that's mutlaq, yani that's absolute. Some of the scholars they actually say the prohibition was writing the Sunnah and the Quran on the same paper. That's what the prohibition was about. If it was on separate papers, then it would have been permissible. Wa Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, he mentioned this in his Sharh fi Sahih Muslim. And regardless of all of everything we just mentioned, look at the contradiction and the fallacy in their arguments. They use a hadith to deny a hadith. And they reject a hadith, صح? So why are they using a hadith as evidence? Where the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he prohibited to write a hadith. Why are they using that as evidence when they don't even believe in a hadith in the first place? But there's a dilemma now, صح? Either they believe in a hadith, which nullifies their rejection, or they do not believe in it, which invalidates their arguments. But that's the second doubt that they bring. The third Normally, ya ikhwata, the classes will finish within an hour. So it's 10 to 11. Like, just to finish off these points, I'll try to finish by 10:15 bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Just so we can finish this introduction, which is extremely, extremely important. The third doubt that they bring, ya ikhwata, the third doubt that they bring, they mention the verse where Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala says, مَا فَرَطْنَا فِي الْكِتَابِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. Surah Al-An'am, verse number 38. They say, we have not neglected in the Quran from anything. That verse. And also the verse they use, وَنَزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ تِبْيَانَ لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ. And we have sent down to you the book as a clarification for all things. So they say that these two verses indicates that the Quran encompasses everything related to the religion. So they say there's no need for anything else like the Sunnah. How do we respond to these doubts? The first thing is the verse they use as evidence. The first verse, ما فرطنا في الكتاب من شيء. Surah Al-An'am, verse number 38. This verse, it talks about Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz. It's not talking about the Quran. It's not talking about the Quran. When Allah said we have not neglected in the book from anything, this verse is talking about the preserved tablet, Lawh al-Mahfuz. Because Allah says in this verse, وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا طَيْرٍ يطير بجناحيه إلا أمم أمثالكم ما فرطنا في الكتاب من شيء ثم إلى ربهم يحشرون. Before it, Allah talks about, He says there is no creature that crawls on the earth, nor a bird that flies with its wings. إلى آخر indicates, that the scholars of Tafsir, they mention that is talking about the preserved tablet. And everything that is written from lifespan and sustenance and fate and happiness and misery are present in the preserved tablet. As for the other verse that they mention, وَنَزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ, and we have sent down to your book as a clarification for all things. This is the other evidence they use. We say yes, there's no doubt that the Quran contains clarification and explanation of everything. But this does not mean sufficiency over the Sunnah. Because following the Sunnah is following the Quran. Because the Quran guides us and commands us to adhere to the Sunnah of the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام. ولذلك جاء في البخاري, he mentioned that Abdullah bin Mas'ud رضي الله عنه, Abdullah bin Mas'ud رضي الله عنه, he said, may Allah curse the woman who gets a tattoo and or who does a tattoo, and those who have themselves tattooed, and those who pluck their eyebrows, and those who split their teeth for beauty, altering the creation of Allah. This is a hadith of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. Abdullah bin Mas'ud, he was mentioned this hadith. So a woman came up to Abdullah bin Mas'ud, okay, and he said to him, I have heard that you curse so and so. I have heard that you curse so and so. For Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, what did he say? He said, why should I not curse those who the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam has cursed? Why what is in the book of Allah? She said, she said, I read the whole Quran and I did not find what you say. Where does it say that Allah cursed the woman that gets a tattoo, or the one who does the tattoo and plucks their eyebrows? Ila akhiri. Abdullah bin Mas'ud anhu, he mentioned that verse number 7 of Surah Al-Hashr. وَمَا أَتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. Okay, the verse where Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, he says, whatever the Messenger alayhi salatu gives you, take, and whatever he forbids you from, refrain from. Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah said, no one encounters a situation in the religion without finding the guidance to the right path in the book of Allah. So if it is said some rulings are initially established by the Sunnah, we say that it is actually taken from the book of Allah. Because the book of Allah has obligated us to follow the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and has made it obligatory for us to accept his word. Does that make sense, Shaykh? A fourth doubt that they bring, someone sent a message on the chat that there's noise at the back. It's because I'm actually teaching outside due to connection. The connection is better for me outside than inside. So I came outside to teach. So if there's noise at the back, or if something you have not heard, سامحني, you can message inshallah if you didn't understand. If someone heard it, they can mention it. I'll mention it at the end, بإذن ta'ala. The fourth doubt out of the five I want to mention, the four famous doubt that they bring, okay, those who reject the Sunnah, they say and many of the Orientalists, they say this, that the number of hadith is extremely, yani, exceptionally large. The number of ahadith that we have is a lot, sah? So they claim doubt on their authenticity because they say Al-Bukhari mentions that he has selected in Sahih from 600,000 ahadith. So they say it is impossible for such a number of ahadith to be transmitted by a single person. That's the fourth doubt that they bring. And the response to these doubts is the truth is, ya ikhwata, this statement just reveals their ignorance and their misunderstanding of what hadiths are and the reality of narrations. This is from three angles. The first angle is a hadith is not just verbal statements. It includes actions of the Messenger alayhi salatu salam, his approvals, and so forth, even characteristics about him. And the Sahaba, they observed every single matter of the Messenger alayhi salatu salam, every minor, major aspect, even his every movement, his stillness, his when he whispers. فلا شك يعني if this is the case, the hadith are going to be many, صح? You end up with thousands of narrations. The second point is, in the terminology of the early generations and scholars of hadith, a hadith is counted by its narrator, not by its wording. Does that make sense? So if a number of companions narrated a word from the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, the narration of each companion is considered a separate hadith. So for example, the hadith, may Allah brighten the face of someone who hears my words, understands them and conveys them, was narrated by 24 companions. So this is considered 24 ahadith. Even though it's the same hadith, 24 companions have narrated it. So it's considered as 24 ahadith, not just one. And the third point is, many scholars of hadith, they include in their collections not only the hadith of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, they also include the action and sayings of the companions and tabi'een. Many books of hadith, you'll see that, especially like in the Musannafat, the Musannaf of Abi Shayba wa Muhammad Abdul Razak. A lot of books of hadith, they mention athar as well, not just ahadith. For there being a large number is not something that is shocking or surprising. But that's the answer to the fourth doubt. The last doubt, ikhwata, that they mention, or the fifth doubt that they bring, from the common and most famous doubts that they bring, those who reject the sunnah, they say, how do we know the authenticity of these ahadith in these books like Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim when they have not met the Messenger? That's what they say. They say Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Abu Dawood, Ibn Majid haven't met the Messenger alayhi salatu salam. So how do we know the authenticity of the ahadith? Again, this goes back to ignorance and understanding the science of hadith. For Imam Bukhari, Imam Bukhari, for example, he does not narrate directly from the Messenger alayhi salatu salam in his Sahih. He narrates from trusted and knowledgeable scholars. And at the highest level of preservation and accuracy, until it reaches the companions from the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. And the minimum number of narrators between Al-Bukhari and the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam is free. He's free. And it took him 16 years, ikhwata. He spent his whole life, yani, subhanallah, compiling this book. قال الإمام النووي رحمه الله اتفق العلماء رحمه الله على أن أصح الكتب بعد القرآن العزيز الصحيحان البخاري ومسلم. And the main books of hadith, Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Sunan Nasa'i, Sunan Abu Dawud, Sunan Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, Muwatta, Darimi, Muslim, Ahmad, these nine books are considered the main books of hadith. But there are many other books. The chains that are mentioned in these books, ya ikhwata, they're not random. Does that make sense? There's an entire science which is studied, as we mentioned in the beginning, hadith dirayatan, right? And jarh wa ta'dil. Scholars have tied themselves and spent their entire life aiding and preserving the sunnah. You know, these statements that people say today, Sallallahu Azza wa Jalla yahdina jami', where they say that these ahadith are story, tales, or they say, what guarantees to me that Imam Bukhari or Tirmidhi did not lie and write things from themselves and then attribute it to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. Wallahi, ikhwata, if they knew the reality of what these scholars went through, they will feel shy. They will feel shy to say anything. They will feel shy to make these type of statements. The one who studies and looks at the lives of these scholars and the effort they put to preserve and get these ahadith to us, or to preserve these ahadith, wallahi, they will feel shy. And do you think it's something easy to lie about the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and for his lie to spread and go unnoticed by everyone except you? Do you think the Sunnah is so insignificant to the Muslims that their scholars, the scholars of Hadith and the scholars of Hadith, is something so insignificant to them that they're going to lie? Is this your belief? لا شك شيء هذا اتباع الهواء. It's reality. Follow the desires يا إخوة. The preservation, the compilation, the transmission, documentation of the Sunnah. Wallahi, إخوة, if you knew what the scholars went through, if you read about it, you won't read about it except that you'll cry. The effort they put in. Just because of time, I won't go through it. Like, I was going to go through the three categories of scholars. So there was a category that's focused on memorizing the ahadith, tracking down the narrations, hearing it from the scholars, traveled, months and months, memorized it and documented it. Then there's another group of scholars who focused on the critique of the hadith, to judge the hadith based on the acceptance or rejection. But this was also a task undertaken by the scholars of hadith, where they will test, and they will judge, where they will know everything about the narrators in the chain. His name, his lineage, his birthday. They will know them more than their own spouse or their children. And the third is the stage of documenting it and putting it in the books and in manuscripts. I was going to speak about these three in a bit more detail. Just because of time, we won't go through it. We won't go through it, inshallah. But the fourth point I wanted to mention from this introduction out of the five is the evidence from the Quran, the evidence of the Sunnah from the Quran. The evidence of the Sunnah from the Quran. There are many evidences. I'm just going to mention five just because of time. I can mention a lot, like we just mentioned five just because of time. Number one, the indication in the Quran of Iman in the Messenger ﷺ being obligatory. As Allah says, Aminu billahi wa rasulih, which is a command. Believe in Allah and His Messenger. Number two, everything in the Quran that has indicated the obligation of taking what the Messenger ﷺ came with without restriction. وَمَا أَتَاكُمْ رَسُولٌ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. And whatever the Messenger ﷺ has given you, take from it. Whatever he has forbidden you, then refrain from it. And this is unrestricted. Allah Azza wa Jalla has mentioned it in an unrestricted form. Number three, everything in the Quran that indicates in the obligation of obeying Him. And obeying Allah is in reality, obeying the Messenger is in reality obeying Allah. Everything in the Quran that has indicated in the obligation of obeying the Messenger ﷺ, and the obeying him is obeying Allah. As Allah says, مَن يُطِعِ الرَّسُولَ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهَ وَمَن تَوَلَّى فَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ عَلَيْهِمْ حَفِيظًا. He who obeys the Messenger has indeed obeyed Allah. The fourth is everything in the Quran that has indicated in the obligation of taking him as an example. As Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرَ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. Allah mentions Surah Al-Ahzab, verse number 21. There has certainly been for you in the Messenger of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala an excellent example. The fifth is everything in the Quran that has indicated in the obligation taking his ruling when differing. Everything in the Quran has indicated in the obligation of taking the ruling of the Messenger ﷺ when there's a difference. فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِيمَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He says, none of you truly believe until they make you, O Muhammad, judge concerning that which they dispute among themselves. So I just mentioned five. Like, there are many, many evidences from the Quran to prove the evidence of the Sunnah and authority of the Sunnah. The last point, I want to mention, we'll stop here, inshallah. Wasamihni, forgive me for taking your time, is the 10 principles when it comes to Aqidah in regards to the legislation of the Sunnah. And I'm just going to mention it in bullet point form. Aqidah Ahlul Sunnah, our Aqidah when it comes to the legislation of the Sunnah. Number one, that the Sunnah is the counterpart of the Quran. One cannot be independent of the other. And faith in one without the other is insufficient. That's the first principle. The second is there is no contradiction between the Sunnah and the Quran, for they are in agreement and in harmony. The third is the Sunnah cannot be disregarded in favor of the Quran alone. And the reality of this claim is the disregard of Islam, because Islam cannot exist without the Sunnah. Islam cannot be understood without the Sunnah, and Islam is not accepted without the Sunnah. So, the fourth is whoever obeys the Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam, has obeyed Allah. Has obeyed Allah. And adherence to the Sunnah is adherence to the Quran. Turning away from the Sunnah is equivalent to turning away from the Sunnah, from the Quran. The fifth is it is impossible to understand and implement the Quran independently of the Sunnah, because the Sunnah it serves as an explanation and the interpretation of the Quran. The sixth is the Sunnah is an independent authority in legislation. So what comes from it in accordance with the Quran is approved, or what comes from it, which is a an increase of what is in the Quran, is also approved. So that which is mentioned in the Sunnah is not mentioned in the Quran is still considered a proof. The seventh is that the entire Sunnah is revelation. In its words, its deeds, its approvals. There's no distinction whether it pertains to acts of worship or transactions or beliefs and morals. Ila akhir. The eighth is that the Sunnah is not something temporary. The Sunnah is not something temporary. It's not specific to that time. Okay? Meaning that it is something that is perpetual, if that's the right word. It's something that, we believe in and we follow until the last hour, like the Quran. The ninth is that the established authority of the Sunnah and its independence in legislation is a religious necessity that has ijma', yani unanimously agreed upon. And the last principle is having hate of the Sunnah is having hate for Islam itself. For those who dislike anything from the Sunnah is as if he's disliking or hating Islam itself. So these are the 10 principles when it comes to Aqidah of the legislation of the Sunnah. Everything that we mentioned is sitting in Ikhwata is extremely important. Extremely important, especially with the doubts that are widespread today on this topic. And it's extremely important, Ikhwata, that we understand the importance of the Sunnah. So I felt that this introduction is extremely important. We did leave some things out just for time. And I felt this introduction was extremely important before starting the book. Inshallah ta'ala, next week we will start the book, the introduction of Imam Nawawi. He actually mentioned the introduction, which is a page or two before he starts mentions the first hadith of Umar ibn Khattab, with the Messenger alayhi salam. He said, hadith. For those who asked about some points that they missed, do not worry, the class has been recorded. So inshallah ta'ala, if you email us, we will send you the recording if you joined. And we have someone who knows who joined. So if you join, then you can have the recording if you're going to be continuous in the classes. بإذن الله تعالى. وفقه الله في الجميع وبارك الله في الجميع والله تعالى أعلى وأعلم وصلى الله وسلم نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah ta'ala we'll carry on next week بإذن الله تعالى. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.